Hello, welcome back to Humble Running. Thank you for tuning in to my best of videos, and thank you to those who did watch until the end of the video, saw my requests to rate your quiver, maybe have a little fun. This is not a roast, of course. I did get a couple of submissions, so thank you very much for those. I think I have some good food for thought, fodder for discussion when it comes to trail running shoes. So let's just get right into it here. The first submission I got comes from Tim F. He gave me a selection of Salomon shoes to go over. First one he has, and he labeled this as his recovery shoe. This is the S-Lab Ultra Glide, which you have right here. Second shoe he gave me was the S-Lab Ultra. This is the François D'Haene version, FDH, let's just go with that right now. And he calls that his all-around Swiss Army knife. Third option he gave me was the Salomon S-Lab Pulse R4 shoe that I just did a full review on, so I guess he was watching my best of videos and my full review here. He calls this his trail tempo shoe. I have a shoe in the middle here. This is the S-Lab Genesis. I do not have the FDH version. Okay, so if you're submitting shoes in the future for maybe rate my quiver format that I have going here, don't be afraid to submit shoes that I have not run in. It might jog my memory, and I might just throw in some comparable shoes. So I have this one kind of slotted in the middle here, although there's probably more overlap between these two shoes in terms of maybe distance and duration. The FDH shoe we'll talk about in a little bit. I had a little bit of back and forth with Tim there, so a little bit of discussion about that shoe, and I'll kind of give my thoughts on it. I'm trying to see if I can get a pair of those for testing. He did mention in one of his follow-up emails that there is a version 2 of the S-Lab Ultra. Now this is the Ultra Glide, the S-Lab Ultra, the François D'Haene FDH shoe. He did mention there's a version 2 available in France, but not in the United States. I'm not sure about that myself either, so I think he's got a pretty good setup here. I think between those three shoes, this is, he mentions, a shoe that has range for more. It's certainly different. I got a lot of comments in my latest reviews, especially the Pulsar 4 and the follow-up best of reviews. I feel like at 34.28, 34 at the heel, 28 under the forefoot there, definitely a step up from the OG Pulsar that I had been running in and the version 3, which I have not run in, but obviously I've seen that shoe. That shoe is much more minimal and more of a like crazy lightweight speedster that the S-Lab Pulsar has known to be in the past. So I think this is really a great shoe. If you want to have a speed shoe in your trail arsenal, I think this is probably one of the best picks out there because it does have that versatility. You know, it's not like you're going out, say if you're doing like a speed workout, if you're a road runner, you're going to the track, you might have a specific track shoe. I don't know, maybe these days people are running in super shoes on the track. Maybe it's a little bit different nowadays, but you're generally not going out to just like do speed intervals and go home when you go trail running. If you want to run faster on the trails, you're generally still going out for a bit of a run. So it's nice to have a fast feeling shoe, a fast running shoe with some pep in it, but also, you know, maybe a little bit of comfort if you are going to be out there for a bit. One thing he did mention, in the arch area of the foot, I feel like this could be a problem for some people. There's a very strong firmness. Not feeling this breaking in. I feel that Salomon could have rounded out this area better. So we're looking at this area, and this is something I did bring up in my full review there. There's no insole in this shoe. It's just kind of like a sewn in fabric-y layer. There is like a seam that goes around the edge. There's no stitching anywhere along there. There's just no or very little contouring around the arch. And I think I did mention it does feel kind of flat in that area. So maybe the firmness of some of the midsole, it's not a particularly soft shoe. It's a highly responsive shoe. You've got that Energy Foam Plus in the rear. You got the carrier foam, the wings here. That is a little bit of a firmer for stability there, but it just feels a little flat under the arch there. I talk about sometimes I like a good contouring under the arch just for support on the foot. Feels like maybe prevents you from rolling in a little bit. Maybe they wanted to maintain that kind of agile feel in this shoe, keep a flatter feel under the arch, and maybe less chance of maybe rolling over, taking a lateral turn on here. I think with the flatter feel on the inside, it does give you a little more versatility, maneuverability, and technical terrain. You don't feel like your foot is particularly locked into a certain position, but I will say it's maybe not as comfortable, and maybe that's some of the firmness that Tim is feeling here coming through to the bottom of the foot. I don't think it's an issue. Someone in my last review did mention that there was a female athlete that ran this shoe at Western States, which is incredible. I mean, I couldn't see myself running 100 miles in this shoe, but I think for up to 50K, 50-mile range, it's certainly an option. Moving on to some discussion about this S-Lab Ultra Glide here. This is probably a shoe I did not fully get along with. I actually pulled this out and I did a kind of a run around the neighborhood on the road. This is a very soft shoe. I've just been testing the Prodigio Max recently, and I had a couple questions as it relates to this shoe, and I thought, well, let me just feel it out a little. We've got these relief spheres set up under here. It is a weird feeling underfoot. It's a little incongruous. Is that the right word? It just feels, obviously, it feels like it looks like there's, your foot is kind of moving on the ground, and it's not a like consistent surface. There's just like a, I don't know, I guess it does take pressure off certain areas of the foot, and that's definitely a different feel underfoot compared to other shoes. I think the thing with this shoe is the upper. I mean, obviously they've already come out with the version 1.5. So initially I thought, why? There's no reason for this to come up so high. It didn't give me an issue, but it is a little bit bothersome. I talked about this in my best cushion video, so I won't dig in too much detail here, but they've already come out with a version 1.5. It's just a little sculpted down here. They just essentially lowered this. It looks like they might have had to adjust the inner material, but it looks like the same type of soft felty fabric on the interior there, but they just kind of cut this down a little bit. And I think that, you know, that should have been done from the beginning. I mean, at least they're listening, and the fact that they can come out with a 1.5 fairly soon after release, I mean, just shows that at least they're attentive to the market, and that it also does prove that it is kind of an issue and maybe not necessarily a feature. Trail shoe companies, that you need to have this Achilles collar so high, there's really no reason. It doesn't hold the heel in any better having this pressing in the back of your Achilles. It's just no reason to be there. So being that Tim does have the FDH shoe in the mix as what he calls his all-around Swiss Army knife, he actually in his follow-up said that he has raced Hard Rock, so congratulations Tim for running Hard Rock in that FDH shoe, and he does label this as a recovery shoe. Let's take a look at some of his comments here. I really like the S-Lab Ultra Glides despite getting shorted on V1. The upper should be matrix just like the S-Lab Genesis, and this is one of the reasons why I brought this out here. This would bring a world of improvement to what I think is a good shoe. Now, he pointed out, I told him that somebody had sent me a picture of the matrix upper on this shoe from Ryan Sandus, and he said, oh, that was me. I might have gotten a couple other kind of pictures from other subscribers and followers there, but I'm throwing those up on the screen there. I mean, this shoe, certainly at $250, Tim here also believes that it's a bit overpriced, and I think personally there's no way that's just a huge sticking point in this shoe. There's no way that this is a $250 S-Lab shoe with this upper. He mentions that the shoe that Ryan Sanders was running in, it's like a Kevlar material. What I don't get is, why do brands come out with something that I don't believe has been fully vetted? I think the first version is like a throw it out there, see what happens, and then hit the consumer with version 2 or 1.5, as we've already talked about. I get the business model and all of that, but I'd rather a brand wait, shake out the cobwebs, and come out with a solid version 1. I do echo his thoughts there. The price point of $250, that's an S-Lab price point, but this does not feel like an S-Lab fit and an S-Lab, you know, certainly lightness or quality of materials in the upper here. This is just, it's just quite thick. I talked about this in other places. This tongue setup here, you have the quick lace system, you have the gusseted kind of S-Lab tongue here, smooth neoprene on the inside, but I think it's just too smooth. The foot moves around on the inside. This upper is thick. It's not very breathable there, having a hard time blowing air through there. Certainly a matrix material would definitely be the way to go if you're going to price this certainly at $250. If we take a look at these shoes here that Ryan Sandus posted on Instagram here and there, we haven't seen official pictures of this shoe, but it's essentially this shoe, and you can see the knit collar there, similar to this setup here. So in 1.5, they went ahead and kind of cut this down a little bit, but still kept the same setup. Obviously, it's not a major update. Maybe in version 2, as Tim is saying, that's what they're going to do. You can see the knit collar similar to this Genesis. You can see the matrix material. This is an S-Lab upper, and this shoe I believe is $200, I think, retail. So this shoe comes in cheaper than this one. This is Ryan Sandus' actual original shoe. So I'm surprised that when they go with this, you see him testing matrix type upper with this integrated knit collar here, but yet they released this shoe. I think Tim is mentioning the brand's kind of the business side of it. I think they put so much into the relief sphere kind of aspect of it. I think they wanted to have that be the selling point of this shoe, and then, like he said, maybe move on to kind of throw on added features into version 2, which, okay, as Tim states, I can see the business side of that, moving and stepping up from one stage to another, but it just kind of puts this shoe in a weird spot. Like, as I was running in it the other day, it feels kind of soft, it feels kind of nice. It's definitely a smooth riding shoe, and if you gave me the shoe and said, oh, okay, this shoe is in line with other shoes, it's $160, I'd be like, okay, great. Like, cool technology, it feels soft, the upper's okay, you know, the quick lace is there, it's nice. Then you come at me with $250, maybe a different issue. So looking at his quiver here, you've got the recovery model. Again, you've got that FDH shoe. I wish I could get a test pair of that model, actually. It does have the fiberglass plate in there, and it makes me wonder if that is maybe potentially a predecessor to the Cloud Ultra Pro. I'd love to have the feel of the softness of that FDH shoe. It maybe seems like it could be slightly firmer than the On shoe. The On shoe is extremely soft underfoot, but it also has that fiberglass plate. So it seems to be along those same lines. It's listed at 28.20. Tim mentions here, I don't believe the stack is 28 at the heel, 20 at the forefoot, as stated on the tongue of this shoe. Again, this is the shoe that he says he wore in Hard Rock. So 8 mil drop there, runnable shoe. It just strikes me as that Cloud Ultra Pro type of shoe before there was the Cloud Ultra Pro. So love to get my feet into those for testing, but as of now, I don't have that one. Okay, moving on to round 2. Next submission comes from Robert B. He sent me his quiver of 5 trail shoes. I have one stand in here, that being the Nike Wild Horse 10. That is not part of his quiver. He did send me a little bit of background information, so let's go through it here. Here you go, but thought a brief note about myself. 63 years old, 175 to 180 pounds, have completed a few hundred milers, wanting to do the Monster 300. Thanks for any information you can offer. Norda 001 and 005, Cloud Ultra Pro, Nike Zagama 2, not this one, Hoka Tecton X3, and the Mount Coast T1 over there. Have run in them all about 50 miles each. Zagama 001 and 005 and Mount Coast T1 are my go-to. Mount Coast have also been good. Also, my struggle is the X3. Seems squirrely on the downhills and not too much max cushion, but don't have a lot of miles in any of them. Okay, so first of all, Robert, 63 years old, running 100 milers, looking to do the Arizona Monster 300, living your best life in terms of trail running and having a nice quiver of shoes here, okay? these are really top premium shoes. So congratulations, Robert, for doing those 100 milers, gearing up for the 300, and also having a pretty nice trail shoe quiver, if I do say so myself. One thing that strikes me is you seem to like the Piba foam, okay? The soft, responsive, lightweight cushioning here. If you got the Piba in here, you mentioned you have some problems with the shoe, which I will get to. Helion HF foam here is Pebax based. This shoe is React X, the Wild Horse 10, but the Zagama 2 that you do have is, of course, Zoom X, Full Zoom X, which is Pebax. Also, Piba EVA blended here in the Mountain Coast T1. So it seems you do like that lightweight, responsive type of feel underfoot. TPEE, Arnatel TPEE with the Norda 005 here. That's also within the same realm of that Piba foam in terms of feel. Probably a little bit more premium here, a little bit more lightweight in this shoe. Definitely the 001 is obviously the outlier in your setup here. This is the Vibram midsole, which is generally, I don't think they were fully clear on what this is, but it's probably some type of EVA, possibly a blend here, but surely firmer than any of the shoes on the table here. So I'm assuming that your Cloud Ultra Pro is your racer long distance shoe. You mentioned this one not being one of your go-tos. It's not on the list of shoes that you put there. So maybe you're saving this one in terms of mileage on it for racing. All these shoes are quite soft underfoot. You mentioned this one being a little bit squirrely on the downhills. And the one thing I'll say about these shoes is they're generally all very flexible. So I could see you valuing that flexibility underfoot. Even the on shoe here, it doesn't go the carbon plate route. This is a nylon fiberglass plate. So if you look at this shoe, as far as super shoes goes, this is pretty flexy. Again, the speed board's gonna run through here, so you're not gonna get a big lot of flex through the middle there, but it is quite a flexible shoe, and of course soft underfoot. I don't have the Zagama 2. I did test that shoe, but I ended up giving away. It was just too much chunk under the heel. This one is a lot less than the Zagama 2. The Zagama 2 is really punching out there, and it was just, I felt like the heel on that one was too high for my running style. It was just a lot under the heel. I did feel like I was kind of a little bit on a slant with that shoe. That shoe is definitely the Zoom X compared to the React X in the Wild Horse. It's just super, it's that P-back soft, bouncy feel, whereas this one is responsive, but you can tell that it has a denser feel. A little bit different here because, again, you don't have so much cushion underfoot, and you have that very thin kind of rocker up front, which I did talk about in my best cushion video there. So it's quite different from the Zagama 2. It's kind of, it has vibes of Zagama 2, but in a firmer, kind of lower to the ground, and probably, I would say, more stable feel in this one compared to the Zagama 2. Taking a look at flexibility of the other shoes, I mean, this is your firmest shoe, so it is a little bit different. Of course, Norda doesn't have a plate either, but this is definitely, you can see, flexy feel. 005, of course, no plate again. Super shoe, super flexy, and probably gonna feel pretty much similar in here. This one seems, it does have this full coverage rubber here, and I do notice it seems to kind of flex more in a forward orientation. I did the A/B testing of this one against the Prodigio Pro, and I noted how the Prodigio Pro really twists easily like this, probably more so than any other shoe, and this one really flexes easily in a forward orientation. You mentioned this as being one of your go-tos, and I think you mentioned it was probably the easiest shoe to put miles in. I assume, you know, you generally want that forward. I don't know what kind of technical trails you're running, but if you're running 100 milers and gearing up for 300 milers, I assume you're not hitting too much twisty and crazy technical trails all the time. So this is certainly a great option for that. Back to the Tecton X3. It has that Piba foam, full Piba in this. It's very soft. I love the feel of this shoe under my foot, but it does have the carbon fiber plates in there. So if you look at the flexibility of this, there's some by the toe, you can see that's probably the front edges of those dual carbon fiber plates there, where it does flex, but really very stiff. This is this, out of all the shoes on the table here, this is probably by a few degrees stiffer than any of these other shoes. So I would suspect that the problem you have with this shoe is you like probably the feel of that softness. It's similar underfoot. You did mention it not feeling as soft. That's probably the lack of flexibility and the stiffness from the plate. So when you hit the ground in this shoe, it doesn't really squish in probably as much as some of these other shoes, certainly the Zagama 2. This one wants to react off the ground a little bit quicker with those carbon fiber plates. Another thing people have talked about is that stability, feeling a little squirrely, especially in downhills. The upper is another thing here. With that being so kind of reactive off the ground, again, I think this is still a very soft shoe. When I put this shoe on, it feels, I mean, the level of cushion for me feels incredible, but I think it's just the stiffness aspect. Maybe your ground contact time is a little bit probably longer than mine. As being a lighter runner, I'm probably hitting and getting off the ground, so I'm just feeling that softness, that reaction right away off the ground, whereas you're probably just landing ground contact time a little bit more and just like noticing that firmness. And if your foot is on the ground longer, it's just you're noticing that stiffness because you're not, you know, if I'm getting off the ground quicker, I'm not noticing the stiffness as much because I'm already more or less bouncing off the ground as the shoe kind of is intended and is designed for. So the softness is probably good, but I think that's probably the difference in terms of your trail quiver setup, how you feel about this shoe. Size 11.5 in all but the Nordas. They're a 12, so sizing is correct to whatever everyone says regarding Nordas. So I do have this shoe in a 10.5. I have different sizing, so I guess I'll talk about my sizing here. I typically, for a style of shoe that I would wear for a longer distance, certainly I'm not running any 300 milers like Robert here, but 100 milers, I'm definitely probably gonna run a 10, a US 10. Typically I consider my true to size 9.5. So I have this shoe in a 10, this shoe in a 10, this shoe is also a 10. Norda says to size up from true to size. So I don't consider this to be my ultra sizing. I might want a little more space in this shoe. This feels, I would say, out of the sizing here, it feels similar in line to the Mount to Coast here. The Mount to Coast I have in a 9.5. So I have a little bit more variability in sizing than Robert has. So I have a 9.5 here and a 10 here, and I feel like those are a bit equivalent. I have this shoe in two sizes. This is my 10.5 right here with the 005, and I find that I do have a Norda sizing video, so check that out if you want more in-depth details. I find that equivalent in length to this 10, but this is a very wide, spacious fit. I've got a Sidus insole in here. I'm trying to just play around with insoles in this shoe. Robert mentioned here that Norda 005, I love the shoe, doubled up the insoles, and it's perfect. A lot of ground feel and easily works well on technical trails. I do worry how it would feel after a 50 miler. So of all the shoes here, this one is probably the one that's going to be require the most foot strength, I would say. It's so flexy, and it's just, you feel a lot closer to the ground in this shoe than some of the other ones. The 001 is certainly comparable, but with the midsole being firmer and denser, it feels like it could probably protect the foot muscles, especially what's going to get through to your foot and kind of lead to some impact fatigue over the course of a longer distance. This might feel more protective, but the softness of this is really nice. So I've been experimenting with that double insole setup myself. I also, this Sidus, this is a 3 feet trail. I've got these for testing. Sidus is probably, I think they're going to come out with a new version of, I don't typically run insoles in my shoes, but I figured I'd give it a shot with shoes that feel like maybe they don't have that contouring and I have enough space to fit the insole in. So this was a prime candidate because I feel like I needed to fill up space in the 10.5. I have tried the double insole setup as Robert has, but I feel like it kind of jacked up my heel a little bit. I filled up the volume of the shoe pretty well with having the two insoles in there, but I feel like it almost raised my heel a little bit too much, and the shoe does have a bit of a drop to it as is, so I wasn't quite certain on that setup. It felt good. It felt more cushy and protective, certainly when I put that TPU insole from this shoe in there. But I'm just gonna give this a shot. I haven't run in it yet, but it has that contouring over here. I feel like this shoe can run a little bit flat, certainly under the arch. So it's just something I'm experimenting with. So, and being that this is a wider shoe and a higher volume shoe, this is really a good candidate to experiment with some insole swapping, assuming you get the higher size there. Mounted Coast T1, good ground feel. I like the speed lacing. He'll loosen them on long climbs and tighten them on technical descent. So that's a good thing, okay, if you're running 100 milers or 300 milers and you're not at the front of the pack, so to say. You know, if you're doing a miles long climb, it's pretty easy to take 1 second and maybe loosen this a little bit down here to give you a little more comfort on the climb. And then once you know you're going to go on a downhill, these downhills can be miles and miles long. Again, another 2 seconds to just snug this up. I mean, I think that's a great feature. Some people get lace bite with this setup. You could always swap in regular laces, or maybe play around with the orientation of these laces. If you have longer quick laces from other shoes, you can do different things. So it's nice that they have this option. I think it's kind of cool. And as Robert says, it's been working for him. 001, fewest miles of my shoes, but similar in fit as the 005, firmer and less responsive. Works well on technical, but haven't taken it long yet. I did do a long run in this shoe, about 2.5 hours, not super long, but I felt very comfortable. It does feel like a stable shoe. This shoe has a tighter fit, you know, volume wise, especially in the toe box, than the 005 here. Felt very stable and technical terrain. I ran Heaven's Gate Mountain Run, Zach Garner, Norda Athlete. That's a very rugged race, and he wore the 001 in that race. By the way, I do have the 001 on the way. It should be arriving tomorrow, and apparently they blended in some of the TPEE from here, not the full TPE of the 005, but with this Vibram midsole EVA TPEE blend in that 001A. They don't advertise a massive weight drop, but they said it's 70% response compared to 50% in this one. Not exactly sure about what that's going to translate to on the run, but a little bit lighter, a little bit probably softer, more responsive. That could be really a great fit on this shoe. So I'm looking forward to trying the 001, by the way. Tecton X3, 40 miles so far. I want to love this shoe. Extremely squirrely on technical descents. We talked about it. Seems less cushioned than the rest of my Quiver. I don't have a lot of miles, but I was hoping one of my main drivers for the Monster 300. We had some discussion about recommendations for this Monster 300. If you feel that this shoe is soft, I really think it's due to more so the stiffness from the plate than the actual foam itself. A shoe you might want to take a look at, Robert, and we've had this discussion. You might want to look at the Mafate 5 because you have that rocker integrity plate, but it's a wishbone shape. It goes from here to here. It doesn't extend through the midfoot. So you can see it's not like crazy flexible, but you could see how I could flex the shoe. And this is a massive stack shoe. 46, I want to say, off the top of my head. 300 miles is a long way. You can probably sacrifice a little bit of weight to get 46 millimeters under your heel there with an 8 mil drop. That puts 38 under here. And I feel like that plate does help. It keeps it from squishing down too much, feeling soft, like it's sapping energy. Something that I think about with the Mafate Speed 4 version. It feels like that you just kind of sink in too much. The softness is great, but I do feel like this keeps you rolling. And Robert mentioned he was 175 to 180 pounds there. I did get confirmation this kind of information was okay to share. In this review specifically, that was something I talked about. Heavier runners, I think the shoe's weight relative to your own weight, there's less of a relative difference if you're a heavier runner. I think I got that right there. So for me, this shoe does feel on the heavy side, although I think this shoe rides really well for me personally at my weight, and this shoe at its weight here. If you're a heavier runner, I just feel like the weight of the shoe becomes at least relatively less of an issue. So a 300 miler, I would suggest maybe at least giving this shoe a feel. It's definitely going to feel soft. You don't think this one is soft? This one is surely going to feel soft, and I imagine there's going to be some long descents in that race there, and you're going to like this heel. Another option I did suggest was this North Face shoe, Endurus 4. Between the Prodigio Max review I did, the best cushion shoes of 2025, and also to a degree the best of 2025 video, I just seem to be talking about this shoe a lot more. And this is probably a shoe that I've had early, probably November last year, 2024. I've had this shoe probably longer than a lot of these more recent models, but it just keeps coming up because it's just solid underfoot. The level of cushion, it's not crazy soft, but it's cushioned enough. It's very protective. I think these wings here, without being, carbon fiber, it does give you stability. You have a nice, generous, wide platform throughout, and the rocker does help you. So, Robert, for 300 miler, I think this could be certainly a good option. You'd want to check the fit on it. You seem to have good variation in your shoe models here. You didn't mention this one feeling tight. I mean, this one, for me, I get the kind of toe rubbing on this side. It feels a little snug in a 9.5, but you mentioned you had the same size in all of these models, while I have this in a 9.5 and I have 10, 10, 10. So maybe if I actually did have this in a 10, or same sizing in the other shoes as you have, I wouldn't feel that issue here. But being that this is a somewhat narrower toe box, I don't imagine you would have any issues with the toe box in this one. Something I'd point out is with the rocker and slight kind of narrowing up here, very slight. As long as you're sized correctly, this doesn't bother me at all. The width across the forefoot is great in this shoe. Talked about it before. Midfoot lockdown is great in this shoe. This is a really good overall shoe, and I would say for any distance up to 300 milers, this might be a good option to have in there. I think that's all I got on these. This was kind of interesting and fun. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments. If you have your own trail quiver that you think might be interesting fodder for discussion, I could take a look at it. That wasn't so bad, right? I hope Robert, Tim, you're not offended at anything I said about your shoes. I mean, Robert, especially if you're 63 years old and this is your trail running quiver, you are doing something right. So living your best life. Again, congratulations there. If you would like me to talk about your trail running quiver, go to the YouTube homepage, go to www.humblerunning.com. You can find my email there. It is mike@humblerunning.com. Send me your quiver, nice picture of it. Maybe send me your sizes. That's something I had a little bit of a follow-up with. So 3 to 5 shoes, what you do with each shoes, maybe some quick impressions, and your sizing, as I said. And we could just talk through stuff, have some fun here on the channel. Thank you for watching, and I hope to do this again, so send me your quivers.